Hey, what's going on? This is Chris. I'm here with my bros, Tony and Andrew. Tony and Andrew are both my partners in Warrior Soul. And this video here is a discussion on top of a mountain about hormones. Now, it's a lot longer than most of the videos you guys like to watch, but I'm not interested in just getting to the people who like to watch 3-minute videos, get a little piece of information, and then go try to apply it. We're trying to give you the whole story here. This video is going to be about hormones, and a lot of you are really concerned about things like testosterone, and you're concerned about growth hormone, but only as far as it's going to get you jacked and swollen, things like that. But what we're trying to do is give you the whole picture on hormones, because what's the deal with hormones, Andrew?
Well, first of all, the wardrobe coordination was not planned.
Yeah, we're wearing the same thing in the video.
Keep an eye out for that. Neon green is, I think, neither one of our normal attire. But the importance of hormones is everything. It that runs our neurochemistry, and our neurochemistry, biochemistry runs our entire body. So it's absolutely everything.
Right. And if one hormone's off in the entire cascade, then that could set the whole body
Absolutely.
downward spiral. And this is a gentleman here who served in the Green Berets. He got a traumatic brain injury, ended up with hormonal deficiency, and he's lived with hormonal deficiencies, and he's lived with perfectly balanced hormones. And perfectly balanced hormones is a lot better. And Tony here lives his entire life in the flow state. Look at that beard.
What'd you say about hormones?
Where in the world is Tony Flo? Be real. Be on the lookout.
Yeah, if you look at like popular Instagram accounts, like news reports, heads of state, you're probably going to see this guy in the background somewhere. So be on the lookout. Enjoy this interview. The scenery in the background is worth watching, if anything. So we will all be talking to you very soon.
Flo Real for Secretary of State.
What up, everybody? It's Chris and Andrew, and we're up at Forest Falls, California, just getting some nature in, enjoying some of the quiet up here, enjoying some of the trees, the birds, and Piper Dog's running around somewhere, enjoying herself too. One of the things we've been talking about here on this channel is hormonal health, and a lot of people get really concerned about testosterone. So, they get really concerned about testosterone. Everybody thinks of it as the male hormone, and everybody worries about raising their testosterone levels, which is important. But one of the things we lose in that is that hormones are all really dependent on each other. And you can't really treat one hormone without treating the other. Andrew here, he runs an organization called the Warrior Angels Foundation, aside from being my partner in Warrior Soul. And Andrew was a Special Forces operator, a Green Beret, and he sustained a traumatic brain injury and ended up becoming hormonally deficient. So Andrew knows a whole lot about this subject. And Andrew, what's your answer to people who are just trying to raise their testosterone levels?
Well, kind of like Chris was saying, there's the body is dynamic, so you can't just do a one-for-one swap and think that's going to be enough. You know what I mean? So there's upstream hormones of testosterone, and there's upstream effects, and there's downstream effects. So how are you trying to increase testosterone, and then what are the ways that you're trying to measure the effects that's happening? So we know when people are put on testosterone because they're shown to be testosterone deficient or insufficient, what's important is to put them on a DHEA and pregnenolone protocol, and both those items are precursors to testosterone. But what you do, if you're just giving yourself external testosterone and not doing those two, supplementing with those two, you're going to burn those two out, those receptors, those hormones out, and they're not going to be produced naturally, right? So If the two precursors above testosterone are burnt out, then that means now testosterone is what? That's burnt out. And so how you mitigate that is you take DHEA and pregnenolone. And those are also two ways that you can naturally boost downstream testosterone. So I mean that's one way that's not widely known or used in this low T community. If you're falling under the low T category and your professional physician is not talking about DHEA or pregnenolone or the upstream and downstream effects of testosterone, then it's time to look for some more information.
That's one thing. Just so you guys know at home, because I know a lot of you, you're not really familiar with the cascade of hormones and stuff. But when we talk about something like pregnenolone, they call it the mother of all hormones, right? And pregnenolone turns into DHEA, which turns into testosterone or estrogen or estradiol, or cortisol. And it really, when you look at things, they're all related to each other. And so when you're going to a doctor, or potentially a lot of you might be injecting yourselves with testosterone without going to a doctor, which is illegal but dangerous. um, you really have to consider these effects, and if your doctor isn't considering that aspect of it, that all these hormones are related, um, what do you think? Should start looking for another doctor?
Yeah, start looking for another doctor and just
Yeah.
understand like the body is dynamic and there's no such thing as a free lunch. So if you're going to put something in it, there's going to be an effect somewhere else, whether downstream or upstream. And we're not saying that's not a negative thing. That's just saying it needs
Right.
to be addressed, and it can be addressed naturally.
Right.
You know what I mean? DHEA and pregnenolone, these are natural supplements that you can get on the market right now, and you
Right.
don't need a prescription for them. So that's an incredible amount of information there. Something I wish I would have known about 2 years ago.
Exactly. And just so they know at home, a lot of people, when they're considering or talking about a deficiency in testosterone and how it can happen, um, you know, a lot of people think about the testicles, and they think about things like cortisol production, and how that can affect your testosterone levels, stress levels. But Andrew's a case where it was a traumatic brain injury, and it wasn't like a single case where he had one situation where he got knocked out. I think he got knocked out once, right?
Yeah, only one. So just being, living the lifestyle of in special forces, that's just what you do. You're in, around, and explosions in close proximity to them. And so, over time, that's a compounding effect. All those head traumas, and when the brain doesn't have the ability to heal itself, then you start having these consequences. And that comes from what we want to put the brain and the body in is what we call a neuropermissive environment, which basically means it's an internal environment that can regenerate and heal. And when it can't do that, it's usually from three areas: traumas, toxins, or thought. Traumas, toxins, thought. And so in my instance, it was inflammation from the trauma over and over to the head. The regulatory mechanisms that produce these chemicals, these hormones in our brain, it starts with the hypothalamus, which regulates the pituitary gland. So the hypothalamus receives a signal from our senses, and then it sends a signal to the pituitary gland. But what happens a lot of times in these explosive blast waves that cause these inflammation, that causes damage to either the hypothalamus or the pituitary gland. And when that's the case, it's having trouble sending the signal to the testes to make these associated hormones. And it's really easy to identify damage to the pituitary gland, damage to the hypothalamus with a laboratory analysis, because we can look, okay, if the testosterone is low, both free and total testosterone, and then look at something like luteinizing hormones. That luteinizing hormone should be sky high if testosterone is low.
Mm-hmm.
But if luteinizing hormone is low and testosterone is low, that's directly in correlation, directly related to the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus not working and functioning correctly. So those are two areas that we can objectively identify. And I like to say objectively identify, because when I was put on 13 different medications, anti-anxieties, antidepressants, and all these other things that were ruining my life, there was nothing really objective about it. It was just a professional saying, I think we should give you this since you have these symptoms, and that's why it's important, man, to use these objective quantitative measurements.
Right, and there's a couple of things I want to touch on there. First things first, the key word there is inflammation, and inflammation touches so many different aspects of our health. It touches me as far as having ulcerative colitis and not being able to really function properly, or having an intestinal tract that's functioning properly if there's too much inflammation there. For a lot of people in general, the quality of life as far as aches and pains and joints and potential for injury, all those things, quality of life goes down, and the risk of all those things goes up if inflammation is there. And similarly, recovering from injuries like traumatic brain injury, inflammation can create the opposite of a neuropermissive environment, where everything is going to create a negative cascade, and you're going to turn off certain hormones because your brain actually produces, people back there, Piper wants to eat them. Your brain actually produces what percentage of your hormones?
Well, it's the hormones are produced both in the central gland, the brain, and then the peripheral glands. The testes, ovaries, liver. So it's both. I don't know the exact percentage of it, but these hormones that are produced in the brain are called neurosteroids. Hormones that are produced in the peripheral glands, neuroactive steroids. And so there's a relationship there. So why that's important is it means it don't have to have a traumatic brain injury or blow to the head to disrupt that chain. All right, so trauma to the body can elicit an anti-inflammatory response, which is absolutely necessary initially, but when it becomes chronic inflammation in that area, that's going to disrupt that ability to produce that normally or optimally. So that's kind of how that relationship is there, Chris.
And this is why taking care of your nutrition, taking care of your micronutrition is so important for hormonal health as well, because if you're putting a bunch of junk in, that's just going to create an inflammatory environment and raise your body's autoimmunities, raise your body's inflammatory responses in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and the neuropermissive environment, I mean, that goes back to really it's a lifestyle, and it's living an enriched lifestyle. So through understanding nutrition and how to use that, understanding the importance of water and getting the right kinds of water, and when, understanding the effects that light has on us, understanding the effects of our air quality, understanding the effects of electromagnetic frequencies, and then understanding that how the brain works. This term called neuroplasticity means the brain can regenerate itself, right? So it can rewire, build new neural connections, new neural networks, and produce new, essentially, a new brain. So the brain is always adapting at all time from the outside environment, and we know if we give it new information and we take that information and we personalize it and then we apply it to our life, that's making those new connections. And so if you don't have a neuropermissive environment, I couldn't read a book for more than like 5 minutes because I just couldn't keep my focus. And I got to thinking, when I found out, like, okay, I'm no longer going to be able to be a Green Beret. I was medically retired. I lost purpose for a little while, and so I started down this negative thinking cascade, and it was directly related to, my pituitary gland and my hypothalamus not working correctly. But when you start getting this spiral, you have inflammation through trauma. Then your trauma is leading to both putting in toxins in your body. For me, it was alcohol, and now thinking the wrong thoughts. I'm never going to be able to do anything that I'm not going to be able to do what I love. I don't have any purpose anymore. I don't think I'm losing my self-value and my self-identity. I'm malfunctioning in front of my family and my children. So this is creating a massive non-neuropermissive environment. So understanding that, we know that we have the power to decide to change that. And that's the first step, saying I have the power to change this. I know that I can rewire my brain by thinking and learning different things, learning new things, thinking different thoughts, because the same thoughts produce the same actions, which to produce the same results. And what that means is if you're doing and living the same thing every day and it's not serving to you, you're making your past your future.
Right.
And we're saying your past is not your future, but you have to change it in the present. For me, it was, okay, I'm no longer going to live in the past, think about what I don't have. I'm going to focus on what I do want.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that I do want? Not what I don't want, or not what I can't have. And then when I started focusing on, okay, what do I do want? And then it was like, okay, well then how can I get better? And then I got better. And then I was like, okay, well, how can we help other people get better? And then, you start going from selfish to higher elevated states of like selfless. So every time we suffer, lots of times I found that it's that we suffer over it's self-induced in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
And we can change that by going from selfish to selfless. Think about how we can do something for somebody else. That's going to start pulling you into that neuropermissive environment. And once I started to get healthy again, being on the wrong side of health, I don't ever want to put things in my body that are going to cause me not to be able to perform optimally and feel wonderful. Not, just to be the family man I need to be. Not to mention, everything else that we're doing on a daily basis.
And looking back at things too, I mean, we were talking about that. I think when you came on the podcast the first time, the fact that there were things you could have done, even though. So for some of you back out there who were saying, "Oh, well, I don't have a traumatic brain injury. I'm probably not going to have a traumatic brain injury." There's another aspect of this, and that's protecting yourself or putting yourself into an environment where your brain is going to be able to heal itself if something happens. So, there were certain things that you could have taken, like anti-inflammatories and acetylcysteine, that during your time when you were operating, that probably could have prevented a lot of the negative cascade as well.
Absolutely,
right?
man. So there's a number of studies out on this. One that the Army produced, talking about the benefits of N-acetylcysteine, NAC, and it's a precursor to glutathione. But it's an anti-inflammatory, and we use it with our guys and girls in the We're Angels Foundation with phenomenal results. And so 900 milligrams in the morning, 900 milligrams in the evening, and that keeps that stops the brain from being inflamed, or that's is able to put out that inflammatory fire. And it's not hard to do because we're doing it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And learning that, if I was operating now, I would be on stuff that costs relatively pennies on the dollar,
Right.
to invest in my health and keep my brain in a neuropermissive environment. You know what I mean? And
Right.
you think about that when we make that investment in our operators, in our service members, we're not losing people to traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress and all these other things way before they're ready to end their military careers. We're investing millions of dollars in them to be this asset, and now you have all these guys with all this experience, and the reason that we're having the problem that we're having in the special forces community with traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress is because the brain is in a non-neuropermissive environment, and it's riddled with inflammation, and it is an easy fix.
Exactly. And the big question for everybody at home, and I think the main focus of this video is, wherever you are and whatever you're doing. A lot of the people who watch this channel, they're either veterans or people who came to me through the bodybuilding community. And in either situation, whether you're out there and you're serving, whether you're in the field, whether you're in the gym just trying to put on muscle and stuffing your face with calories, inflammation is a factor, right? And inflammation can be a factor in creating problems for you down the line, problems that can affect your health, problems that are going to inhibit you from eventually doing what you love. And there's things that you can do out there to protect yourselves. And one of which that Andrew mentioned was taking things like N-acetylcysteine, understanding what your blood readings are like, and going to professionals who could help you with understanding how your body's working, what it's deficient in, what it needs to heal, what it needs to perform. And, beyond that, I think one of the problems in the bodybuilding community, especially, is we think in terms of really simple things. You know, protein level, eat lots of protein, get enough calories, build muscle, raise your testosterone levels. But it's really more than that. We have to be taking care of our inflammatory levels. We have to be taking care of ourselves, and it's not something that's going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, Chris. If they're trying to take in all kinds of protein, and they're not really particular about that protein source, it could be extremely high in omega-6s,
Yep.
right? So omega-6s are the kind of fat that we don't want in our body. We want omega-3s. But here's the thing: omega-6s is going to cause inflammation. It's going to promote inflammation. So you could be taking massive amounts of protein and turning yourself into a non-neuropermissive environment and not even understanding that. So you want to make sure you're eating something rich in omega-3s or taking something rich in omega-3s and that has a 1-to-1, a 1-to-2, or a 1-to-4 omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. But the Western diet is like 1-to-20 ratio.
Hey, what's going on? This is Chris. I'm here with my bros, Tony and Andrew. Tony and Andrew are both my partners in Warrior Soul. And this video here is a discussion on top of a mountain about hormones. Now, it's a lot longer than most of the videos you guys like to watch, but I'm not interested in just getting to the people who like to watch 3-minute videos, get a little piece of information, and then go try to apply it. We're trying to give you the whole story here. This video is going to be about hormones. And a lot of you are really concerned about things like testosterone. And you're concerned about growth hormone, but only as far as it's going to get you jacked and swollen, things like that. But what we're trying to do is give you the whole picture on hormones. Because what's the deal with hormones, Andrew?
Well, first of all, the wardrobe coordination was not planned.
Yeah, we're wearing the same thing in the video.
Keep an eye out for that. Neon green is, I think, neither one of our normal attire, but the importance of hormones is everything. It that runs our neurochemistry, and our neurochemistry, biochemistry runs our entire body. So it's absolutely everything.
Right. And if one hormone's off in the entire cascade, then that could set the whole body
Absolutely.
downward spiral. And this is a gentleman here who served in the Green Berets. He got a traumatic brain injury, ended up with hormonal deficiency, and he's lived with hormonal deficiencies, and he's lived with perfectly balanced hormones. And perfectly balanced hormones is a lot better. And Tony here lives his entire life in the flow state. Look at that beard.
What'd you say about hormones?
Where in the world is Tony Flo? Be real. Be on the lookout.
Yeah, if you look at like popular Instagram accounts, like news reports, heads of state, you're probably going to see this guy in the background somewhere. So be on the lookout. Enjoy this interview. The scenery in the background is worth watching, if anything. So we will all be talking to you very soon.
Flo Real for Secretary of State.